good morning. We are going to start the session, CTO Conclave, Decoding the Success of 5G Grand Debut, Part B. We have with us Mr. Rajesh Singh, EVP Technology, Radio Planning, Network Planning and Strategy, VI. Next, we have Mr. Shankara Narayanan Vishwanathan, Vice President and CTO Business Solution, TCS. Next, we have Bijoy Pankaj, EVP, Chief Technology and Strategy Officer, Mavenir. We have with us Kumar N. Sivarajan, CTO, Tejas Network. We have with us Michael Joseph, Senior Director, System Engineering, Fortinet. I would also like to invite our panel moderator, KG Purushothaman, Head Telecom, KPMG India. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. It's still 11:30 now, and this is our second series on the CTO Conclave. This is the second session, trying to decode the success of 5G in the last 1 year. We all are aware that August 17th, 2022 was when the auctions happened, and the 5G auctions, 5G was actually rolled out from an India perspective. But the preparation for 5G, the ecosystem, the device ecosystem, and the entire rollout plan had already started with a lot of ecosystem partners and also existing OEMs and the telecom service providers for the last few years. The preparation had started, but the grand debut happened on August 2022. What we are trying to decode today is what has happened in the last 1 year. Last year, with the rollout of 5G, a lot of key developments have happened in the Indian context. We know that India has been the fastest, India has seen the fastest rollout of 5G from two perspectives. One is the fastest rollout of sites, more than 330,000 BTS sites have been rolled out. We have more than 100 million subscribers. But what we are going to unlock today is what has actually happened beyond these areas as well. We know that touching the end consumer is a very, very important perspective when it comes to 5G. But there are multiple other use cases of 5G beyond touching the end B2C customer as well. And we have a very esteemed panelists who have not only implemented 5G in the context of India, but also come with rich experience from their from the rollouts that have happened around the world. And what we are going to share today with with their insights is what actually needs to be done in the way forward as well. I'll probably start with Rajesh. Rajesh, from a VI perspective, there is, when it comes to technology advancements, it's not only the rollout of the network, it's about rollout of adjacent technologies, innovation in the way you are addressing customer challenges, customer experiences. Also, how you're working with the supplier and the partner ecosystem, that is also becoming important. Can you share your perspective of how has VI, and personally from your perspective, how has the last 1 year been since the 5G auctions? What initiatives have been taken by VI to roll out advanced technologies to prepare for 5G as well as the future?
Hi, thank you, Purushottam. I think it's very prominent questions in everybody's mind what is happening on 5G. There was a lot of, it's a hype cycle, what we call it, technology hype happens, but if it doesn't deliver to consumer, the technology has no value much. So of course, once India has decided last year auction and then rollout, and as you explained already, is the fastest rollout, but rollout is one side of the story. Infrastructure is being created and India is leaping frog on that one. If you see the globally where people talking about 40-45% coverage, India is talking about 80-85% coverage. So that's a mammoth step has been taken. And same time, India is as digitization and digital platform, digital transformation is happening, and digital infrastructure is very important. So 5G adding in this one, it's accelerating rather. Let me tell you what happens in the last 1 year. If you see the technology and India was globally, if you see the speed index, we were 147th rank. We now leapfrog, I think 143, not 147. We leapfrog to now 47th rank. So we have 72 steps we jumped in. So, I mean, it may take years to move from one step to another step, but we just made a leapfrog and moved to now below 50. And of course, as things will move on, we'll further progress on that. One more aspect has to be seen that the speed, the average speed, what user used to get, it was around 15, 16 Mbps, which is now reported around 300 orders. So
Right.
it is 2000% change.
Correct.
So no technology till now, or I tell you any product, if you bring auto industry, FMCG product, you buy a car, then you buy next car, the product change difference is only 10 to 15%. But here the product difference is 2x, 3x, and even sometimes 1000x. Either you talk about speed, user throughput, experience, latency, you just name it, and capacity, because India somehow, and Pradhan may tell me Bharat, it needs a lot of capacities because we have billion people to serve. And one more example I'll give you is the last time IMC we were there, and when Mr. Narendra Modi, Prime Minister inauguration was there, whole network guys, operators were on the hook. How to serve this 10,000 people gathering one place.
Right.
So there is war room, people on the field, back end side, behind curtain, a lot of people are working. But still I can tell you, last year we had the congestion in the networks, we faced the problem. But this time, because the 5G was there on the ground, we have not faced that problem. We have very, very successfully served the whole function. I think people can watch in who were there that time in Prime Minister inauguration. This time, whatever pictures, whatever things you were taking, all was able to send it to next guy. And there was no congestion in the network. So that's what reflecting in consumers say that what experience is multifolding and changing. So that's where the adaptation, I think, success stories itself talks about. But it's not here because B2C is one thing, and 5G is not meant for only B2C.
That's right.
So MBB, we talk enhanced MBB, and this will happen. But others, B2B and all other areas has to be unfold. And so operators are working with the entire ecosystem because B2C is directly control of the operators, but somehow other aspects may not be directly controlled. It has to be comes under partnership. So as a VIR, in fact, in all industry is working currently with co-partnership with ecosystem, developing private enterprise networks and other critical applications, especially Industry 4.0. So all things are happening, or healthcare, medical, education. If you see visit our booths, you will see all kind of use cases what we're displaying. And same time, we're seeing that lot of traction is coming from the user sides.
Right.
For example, in this World Cup cricket, if you see that TV has moved to your palm. I'm saying everybody is watching. Nobody is watching on the TV. It's everybody watching on the. So streaming is of course going to be a big game changer, and it's there. But it's not only streaming. Streaming is users adopt this and user will understand. And I said, in cricket, you're seeing similar now. Maybe I mean there is a destruction. We're talking about TV industry.
That's
not
right.
only the palm TV, what I talked about, the handset moving TV, even the wireless home TV was through fixed lines. Now it's moving to wireless. And of course, India has the limitation of broadband connections, fixed broadband especially. That is a lot of discussion happening, and you see everybody was talking some air fiber, V fiber, and all fiber. So all getting converted to wireless, which is very easy to deliverable. So we're seeing the traction where now after hype there's a little stagnation, and then now it's moving towards the traction where a lot of these use cases are getting developed, and I think consumer will enjoy that benefits.
Sure. We heard Rajesh, who comes from a telecom service provider perspective, and now I'm going to channelize my questions more towards first Shankar Narayan, who will give us a perspective first on the technology side and what advancement will happen, and then I'll move to what changes have happened from a network perspective, and that's where we'll bring in our friends from Mavenir as well as Tejas. And then finally, we will also try to get a perspective from a security perspective from Fortinet around what kind of changes have happened from a security perspective. That's why we'll try to channelize, but the focus will be on decoding. So once we've set the base for what Rajesh has said, I'll request Mr. Shankar Narayan. From a technology perspective, 5G is the communication layer, but there are many other things around technology that is changing and that is making the use cases more successful, be it on the IoT side, be it on the rollout of the other device ecosystem. You have AI that is also have been brought in, and there are other ancillaries. Cloud is becoming prolific now. You work not only from an India perspective, but also you have a global perspective on what is happening on 5G and the use cases. How are some of these emerging technologies converging? And and with 5G as a communication layer, are you seeing use cases that are actually becoming really successful first globally? And in the Indian context, what have you started observing?
Thank you, Purushottam. I think it's a very valid question. In my role in TCS, I have a very unique opportunity to help our customers understand and make technology real. Because there's a big difference between seeing a digital heart surgery remotely done on video to really doing it in a hospital. There's a big difference, okay? So making it real for our customers is the biggest challenge.
Right.
Automated robots, fully automated factories, automated warehouses are all the promises that 5G espouses in great detail. But far and in between, customers have struggled to embrace and make the transformation. The reason is multifold. So let me peel the layers of the onion. The way we always look at in TCS is 5G incidentally, you should never put the cart in front of the horse. Okay, 5G is to me a metaphor. Don't use 5G as the baton to transform companies. Because customers will see the video, they will appreciate what you say in the video, but they understand the problems in the landscape. They understand the shop floors is riddled with wires. They understand that without people, you cannot have automated, you can't have AMRs because there's one step in the floor. You can't have an AMR robot running around. So there are significant logistic challenges which exists in our customers, which has to be understood and appreciated. So the way we look at 5G is, but all we said, 5G is a metaphor. I'll explain to you how we have to see the whole landscape. There are multiple technologies converging together which makes this biggest transformation happen. And to us, the next wave of digital transformation is in the operational technology space, is in the OT space. It is in the shop floor. It is in the warehouses. It is in the shipping yards and so on and so forth. First big transformation which is happening is IoT. IoT is happening in scale. The reason why IoT is happening in scale is compute cost is going down so rapidly. You can have smart chips, embedded chips, with sufficient embedded software in it, or you can deploy software at runtime. So IoT is becoming in scale, so which means you can have better vision cameras, for example, for digital quality management. You can have 4K cameras for drones and so on and so forth. The second big leverage is people say, I need instantaneous reaction and response to any decision which needs to be taken, which essentially means analytics, which essentially means AI. So AI, then immediately people say, AI for responses to happen, it can't be sitting in your office. It has to be close to the point of incidence where the actual thing is happening. So AI needs to be deployed in the chip. AI needs to be deployed in the edge, and so on and so forth. Then comes the edge maturity. The whole notion of edge, there are multitude of edges happening. The whole notion of edge is so diversified. You have an edge in the shop premise, you have a near edge in the mobile in the Vodafone center, then you have your own cloud ecosystems and so on and so forth. Then all of this ensures that you are able to process, respond fast and so on and so forth. Then the new buzzword, generative AI. Everybody is fascinated by ChatGPT because the moment you ask for a menu, it is able to give you what you can do in Delhi and so on and so forth. All fascinating things with chatting, and it seems to be so intelligent. And then people are wondering, what does generative AI has to do with 5G and IoT. The biggest challenge which exists in any digital transformation is people forget the people aspect of it. It is either you have a portrait of Ranveer Singh or you have a portrait of Shankar Narayan. There is nothing in between. But most often than not, all the customers are in between. It is the gray which matters a lot. There is an interplay of people and systems together. You can't have 100% full automation. Even the most advanced automated car manufacturers are struggling right now because as made-to-order cars are coming in, you need people intervention in place. How do you create cyber physical systems really operational? So it is about systems, automated systems assisted by people. And there lies generative AI. Generative AI is not about intelligent chats. It is not about creating cool videos. Yes, it does that in a consumer context. In an enterprise context, it is able to augment a worker in a significantly different way. I'll give you a simple example. This is a shop floor which I visited last week in UK. One of the top car manufacturers, fully automated cars, etc., etc. What is the challenge in the shop floor is their FTT is 27%. First time through is 27% for a fully automated shop car flow. Why everything is automated? Then why it is only 27%? The answer is the devil is in the detail. Increasingly, people don't have the same cookie cut car running around. Every car these days is made to order. I need the upholstery in a different way. I need this particular fitting. So the whole notion, the variety in the shop floor and the production line in a made to order manufacturing scenario is so complex. So when it comes to a worker in the shop floor, it very clearly highlights what is the rivet to take for that particular car, because that is automated. The DC machine, the rivet manufacturer conditions what is the power to be applied to the rivet so that the right power is applied. But what the person doesn't know is where to go and apply. As simple as that. So what he does is, he or she places in the most effective place possible and then pushes the car out. Because for them, if they stop, it is a 20,000 pound impact for every hour the production line stops. This is a classic case where if a generative AI ecosystem can assist the vendor, saying this particular car, this is the context of the car, this is the specific part. For this is the nuanced difference that needs to happen. Do it this way. The whole shop floor transformation is a lot different. That is exactly where generative AI comes. Then the new technology, Web3. Web3 is not about creating cool games. It is not about seeing concerts in games. It is not that. It is about creating light applications for users. So if you are talking about an assisted laborer who's doing this rivet job, he or she needs an application through which they can consume this intelligence from generative AI, understand what is the right rivet to be placed for that particular task in play. And that application needs to be extremely light, and that is exactly where Web3 comes in. But all of these needs a very synchronized orchestration and guaranteed service delivery. And to me, there lies 5G. So if you look at the whole narrative of business transformation in a shop floor, it is 5G comes last. You don't need to go and sell to somebody. 5G is all about low latency, it is all about reliability, it is all about high bandwidth. No. The need will automatically be driven by how the transformation is going to happen. What are those needs of transformation? How should I drive that ultra reliability? And then naturally people will say, why not Ethernet cables have existed? In this particular shop floor, the reason is Ethernet cables do exist. But that is exactly where the DC current goes to for all the DC motors that are running. So Ethernet is not sufficient for them. Wi-Fi, there's a huge element of interference. So the 5G becomes a default connectivity fabric, which brings together multiple technologies like IoT at scale, cloud, edge at scale, analytics, various types of analytics, Web3 applications, bringing all of this together, orchestrating that, and hence I always call 5G as a metaphor. To me, we are at the tip of the iceberg. Always statistics have shown that 5G has a huge promise in the enterprise space. All data right now points to a huge adoption at the consumer side. The adoption is yet to happen at the enterprise side. The reason being, people want to understand how to make this work in their shop floor. While they have seen presentations, while they have seen beautiful, cool videos, making it real at the shop floor is where the rubber hits the road. And that is exactly where the biggest impact we can make for enterprises at large.
Thank you, Shankaran. I think one theme I might say is common, between what you have suggested versus some of our previous panelists is around the use case around automotive and manufacturing. From my own personal experience on working on some of these use cases, and we did also a survey across sectors, manufacturing is one of smart factories, manufacturing is one of the biggest use cases apart from logistics and others. But one theme that is clearly underlying is transformation. How can you show the transformation ROI? And if I may ask a follow-on question to you, you mentioned about the use case in UK. In the Indian context, where are these conversations leading? Are you discussing some of the challenges that we face? You did allude to one particular challenge, which is to say, is there an alternative with Ethernet and Wi-Fi being there? Is there a use case? So one example that I have in the example of manufacturing is one of the biggest challenges that we are not able to yet demonstrate is 5G able to solve a challenge around precision manufacturing? Precision manufacturing is one of the biggest challenges, and that relates to even other sectors like healthcare, where you require a high level of precision. Theoretically, it is possible to solve it. Have we actually done it? Are you having these conversations in the Indian context as well?
I think very good question. I think the Indian context, the biggest difference between the Indian context and abroad is all our customers abroad are riddled with legacy. They have huge element of legacy platforms which has existed in the past, and their ability to unwind and reimagine the new landscape is lot more capital intensive. In Indian context, perhaps that is not there. But at the same time, in the Indian context, we have to understand that it is worker-centric industry. Here, you cannot go and pitch a fully automated factory shop floor to a customer in India. It doesn't make sense, because they feel the capital investment far degrades in value to having 10 employees running the shop floor on their own. So here it is all about how can I empower the employee a lot faster and make the task lot more simpler. So essentially here it is all about personalized augmentation. That's the word I use. So when I talk about augmentation, so we need to calibrate and provide our positioning to our customers a lot differently in India. In India, it is about personalized augmentation. How can I ensure that every employee or every skilled laborer in India is able to perform at a quality which is far different. So here the problem is different. Here it is, say for example, if I have 1,000 employees, if an attrition rate of 5% degrades the overall quality of outcome from a shop floor, their challenges are different. Their challenge is how do I keep the training abreast? How do I keep each of the employee abreast with what is the security processes, etc. So here the narrative that we are pitching is there are areas where you don't go for full shop floor automation. Here we go for part automation where we are able to take the difficult tasks out of the employee and made automated. Second level of automation is make the employee assisted in terms of analytics and AI to help employees do their job faster. Here it is all about speed. Faster and more effective, in the sense that even if it is a junior employee, their ability to come to speed a lot faster, because literally it tells, take this particular bolt, take this particular rivet, go to this particular socket, just do this twist to 3/4 of an angle. That is all you have to do. So it's basically you are automating, and only thing is you are using the hands and feet of the skilled laborers there. So our positioning shift has to calibrate to a slightly different level to help them understand and appreciate how we can increase the throughput and so on and so forth. So, but the promise is once you articulate that this is how I can assist the laborer, these are the points of intervention where automation can really make an impact, then the next question, obvious question comes is, can you just stitch this together?
Right.
And then immediately 5G becomes the vehicle to do that.
So, in the Indian context, it's all about how do you make the digital workforce more relevant and
effectiveness of skilled labor. It is not about removing laborers and then making it automated, because nobody trusts systems.
Sure. Thank you, Shankar. I'll just come to you in a bit. After understanding the impact of technology, I'll like to move to the our friends who roll out the actual network. Kumar, if I could come to you first and then to Vijay. Kumar, from your perspective, you are rolling out India's indigenous network, great success and great success stories as well. What are you seeing? I mean, you've heard that in the context of India, it has to be very customized, very specific. You also heard that consumer use cases of 5G is a no-brainer, but industry use cases will take some time. Are you seeing very specific challenges when it comes to the Indian context? What has been your experience so far after the auctions have happened?
So yes, we've been beneficiaries of the government's policy to promote Indian technology.
Yeah.
We're now happy to be part of the Tata Group also in that capacity.
Do you want to go?
I need to keep it
Yeah,
closer.
that's
Yeah,
better.
I think
Thank
I can
you.
hear the echo here. Yeah. So I think from the government's perspective, this indigenous technology was to ensure that we become an exporter, like of the technology, like we're doing with manufacturing of phones and so on. So we're just not consumers, but we also are providers of technology worldwide.
Right.
And this is consistent with the encouragement of manufacturing of phones and so on, right? The second aspect was, to some sense, have control over the technology for security reasons to make sure it's there. So I think it's both an economic and sort of a security initiative, a security imperative that's causing this. In terms of rolling out, yeah, we are rolling out a 4G network which will upgrade to 5G. And the thrust here is also to roll out in areas where there's no connectivity, right? So now with whatever the digital stack of India, everybody needs to have access to the internet, to even for daily transactions, for banking, whatever, right? So we cannot GPay. We've seen people, for even 5 rupees you pay through online. So there will be a section of the people who will be left out simply because of lack of connectivity, right? India tried through BharatNet to try and get fiber to the villages,
Right.
but I think that's a very difficult task. It did succeed, but then you get to sort of one point in the village, right? And then you really need connectivity at your home. So, and also the urban people have mobile. So I think the real need of the hour is to get a mobile signal, 4G, into every home, not just some kind of broadband in the village. So I think with that realization, the government is deploying 4G saturation. So the idea is to ensure that no person is left without 4G access, right? That is today. And tomorrow that will be 5G access. So and I think rolling out in those terrains have its own challenges of power, backhaul, and what you take for granted, fiber-based backhaul and all you cannot do. Power is a challenge, just access to continuous power. So I think those challenges will have to be overcome to ensure everybody has access to a 4G signal. Coming to 5G, so I mean, just to think about it, you may have heard of, Rural Electrification Corporation. So that was set up probably 50, 60 years ago to ensure every village had electricity. And they completed the task maybe 1 or 2 years ago. The government declared every village has electricity. But look how fast every village or every portion would have 4G network. That's probably in 5 years or something compared to 50 years, right? So things are moving at the internet pace. Coming to 5G, I think you didn't ask the question, but I'll answer it anyway. I think 5G has succeeded simply because we are so starved for bandwidth. Okay, so it's not that any new application has actually been enabled. It is just that we need to stream the IPL and the World Cup and everything else, and everybody needs to do it. And there was so little spectrum. So as soon as new spectrum became available, the operators lapped it up. The 100 million people who had 5G phones moved to the new spectrum when they could, and that made the experience better for everybody else.
Right.
So really, even now, the success of 5G in India has been driven only by the requirement for sort of video streaming, entertainment of every kind. None of the other initiatives have taken off. Whether it's URLLC or machine type communication has not taken off, because I think they're sort of ahead of the time, because we had to set some goals for 5G after 4G, and we set these goals, but we couldn't realize them. So hopefully by 6G, we will have enough time to really figure out what is that requires, URLLC. Gaming seems to do well, even real-time gaming, without this URLLC. Maybe it is operating robotic machinery. We still are in the process of figuring it out. Okay, so that's what it is. I don't know if I answered everything.
No, thank you, Kumar. I think you covered one very important aspect, which I thought I should have also asked you, 4G saturation, and thanks, because while the focus is around 5G rollouts, it's very important that rural areas and others which may not be immediately tapped are also covered. Thank you for covering that. Vijay, if I could go to you, congratulations first of all on your new contract that you've won with a service provider. What has been your experience on rolling out an Open RAN stack or an open stack from an Indian perspective? Can you share first a global perspective on how things are working out on the rollout, and in the Indian context with brownfield implementations happening, where are you seeing the niche spot which you are trying to tap, and any specific learnings that you have from an Indian context?
So how much time do I have?
You can 5 minutes.
Okay, because I could speak for a long time or go pretty short. So thank you, first of all, happy to be back here. I'd say from a global perspective, as we see 5G rollouts happening, there's a transformation underway from the operator perspective, because monetization has been the biggest challenge for operators. You spend so much more in rolling out 5G, but ultimately, if it doesn't lead to more revenues for the operators, we as vendors don't succeed, and the operators don't succeed either. And it's been the OTT guys in 4G, at least, it's monetized on the network capitalization that's happened. So I see a bigger focus on the network transformation, be it 5G on enterprise side or consumer side, on ways to monetize. And monetization covers two aspects. Either you bring down the cost of your network, you generate new services. And RAN, of course, is the biggest part of the operator spend. You spend globally, it's around 40 billion a year. And in that perspective, Open RAN has the possibility to remove the vendor lock, bring in innovation, create new players in this ecosystem. And obviously in India, through local manufacturing and through the ecosystem that's being set up through Aspire and other initiatives, you'll see a lot more innovative companies and new prospects happen in this space, which is earlier locked by two traditional vendors. So Open RAN, of course, it's still in early stages. We see it's definitely not a 6G thing, because as some vendors have been positioning, it's happening in 5G. We're seeing large-scale greenfield deployments of Open RAN right now, but expect to see more brownfield Open RAN deployments in 2024 and 2025. The other aspects we covered earlier, of course, from a technology perspective, across different sectors, whether you're targeting healthcare, government, agriculture, we saw in pretty much all the operator booths here, the vision of how we would monetize 5G. And in that regard, moving to a standalone network, which Jio is the only operator at this stage in India who's done it, and globally as well, the adoption of standalone networks has been slower. But we see the push to standalone as a big way of monetizing, especially you look at network slicing, be it in the consumer context for AR, VR kind of enhanced experience, or for enterprise use cases, that being a big aspect to it. We talked about IoT. There's also a big push now for RedCap, the reduced capability in 5G, to get to, and Airtel, for example, just had an announcement on that with MediaTek. So we see that as a global initiative. Another key one on monetization has been networks as a service initiative. So the whole open gateway and API pitch to the network. I was just in Telefonica last week. They are some of the leaders in how we would evolve this towards a metaverse-ready network in the future. So the whole cloudification aspect to it is reducing the cost, be it Open RAN deployment or using the public cloud for disaster recovery kind of scenarios. But ultimately, I think for the operators to be successful and vendors to be successful, you have to monetize the network. And we see a heavy emphasis on that. With India, initial rollouts have been accelerated. You talk about Jio rolling out a cell site every 10 seconds, or Airtel having launched XYZ services. But ultimately, I also see that a part of it is being slowed down deliberately because the initial pitch on monetization 5G has not happened.
Right.
And hopefully it's not a 5G advanced or a 6G use case thing. And especially globally, what I see is FW has been a good use case where monetization has happened in 5G. Network slicing is still in early stages. IoT, of course, it's got we've been talking about billions of IoT devices even in 4G days. But from a monetization aspect, I think it's still early. And there are several areas of technology that can help towards this monetization aspect. You talked about Gen AI in that context. I'd say from a network perspective, the availability of data and the cloudification, be it a software-defined network, and the fact that you have access to a lot of streaming data and analytics that goes along with it, be it on the OT side or IT side, the tools which the hyperscalers bring through partnership with vendors or partnership directly with the operators, those can play a key role in how the network gets analyzed and monitored better, which ultimately leads to lower OpEx. And when you have more dollars or more cash in the operator spend, that eventually will get spent in other areas of the network, be it on API pitch or other avenues. So in summary, I would say we're in early stages. There's a lot of new technologies out there, but work on it with caution because you wouldn't want to just deploy technology for the sake of deploying technology. We saw that in cloudification virtualization with OpenStack. I mean, all the vendors were on the CAS providers pushed it, be it Red Hat, VMware, and others. But ultimately, what happened when it came to the operator network, even within the same server, operators deploying OpenStack just wouldn't scale or wouldn't share the server between vendors. So whatever promise that was there with scaling and utilization of resources more efficiently did not happen ultimately because of the way the operators run the network. And we don't want that same thing to happen in this new cloudification to containerization using the public cloud or private cloud premises. Ultimately, you still have these vertical stacks, which are all being managed by the individual OSS systems that each vendor brings to the table, and you're not able to utilize the common OSS tooling, which can run on the RAN and core and transport network. You've not reduced the cost of managing a network. And that's where we believe the cloudification and moving to common OSS tooling and cloud tooling would leverage get to lower OpEx costs for the operator.
So Bijay, if I could ask you a follow-on question. So in the Indian context, are you spending a lot of time also educating and working with operators on some of these joint initiatives? Because in the Indian context, interoperability is something that is still being experimented. And are you facing some practical if I not use the word challenges, but practical situations where you are working with the network teams of all the operators, and what is your experience around that?
Maybe I'll try to break it into what we're seeing on the RAN side versus the core. On the core side, we've been in that market since 2005. We've got pretty good experience in terms of integrating into incumbent networks, replacing the likes of pretty much all the vendors who play in the core space, be it on IMS or packet core. And that's pretty well standardized. And even though you have a lot of products in IMS, we have a lot of interfaces in the packet core space, 3GPP has well defined those interfaces. So replacement of vendors, be it the Chinese vendors on regions bordering China, which it's pretty much happening in all the operator networks in India, where we have played there, we've not run into challenges, be it integrating into a third-party HSS or SDM, or even for that matter, mixing TAS and CSCF kind of domain. On the packet core side, I'd say in the last 4 to 5 years, we've been playing in that space with vendor replacements globally as well. And there, again, the advantage is that it's fully standardized, it's open interfaces. We've not had the issue with an HSS on the EPC side or an MME interfacing with another node that we bring to the table. So that challenge, there's been some amount of it, I'd say. The bigger aspect there has been on the SGI services, DPI, how the charging happens. Right. Because especially in the Indian market where you have these different circles and how you bill for different circles and each sector being monopolized by one particular vendor and you're replacing that full stack. The billing aspect has been a bigger challenge on the packet core side. RAN is a totally different story because it's always been a locked network. And with the Open RAN, now you have the benefit of being able to mix the radio and the baseband. But at least the first version of it in the Indian market, they're viewing it purely from a TCO perspective, saying, today I get a full stack offering from Ericsson and Nokia at X price. You meet that price, whatever other benefit that you bring down the road in terms of removing vendor lock, innovating with the radio intelligent control and all that, I'll reap those benefits down the road. But to me, right now, it's a cost play.
Right.
And if your TCO does not match what I have, then I'm not going to accept your solution. That's the first challenge that we had to get over. And luckily, we are past that stage since we're working with a few operators here. The second piece has been the lockout on how networks have been deployed in the past. Even though 3GPP has defined interfaces like X2 between the base stations, practically nobody has opened that interface between an Ericsson and a Nokia system.
Correct.
So even globally, when we look at how circles are deployed, each state is allocated to a vendor. And if you have to do a capacity expansion within a state, you always go to the same vendor because you have no other provision. And what we're finding out is when we started the work here, because X2 was an open, we would have, and NSA was the path, right? Outside of Geo, both Airtel and Rajesh can speak to VIL plans. NSA has been the path, and there you have the X2 challenge.
Right.
And if you don't have an open X2, what will happen is a new player coming in will have to bring an overlay band on the RAN side. So the good thing is with the push from tier 1 operators globally, now we're able to do X2. So that challenge has been addressed. Another problem that we see down the road, which is not yet addressed and which we're actively working in the Open RAN standards, is around carrier aggregation. So today, if you look at capacity augmentation on 4G or 5G, the best way to bring additional capacity is CA. And this is not something that's standardized in 3GPP or in O-RAN today. And if you look at vendor solutions, there are custom ways in which you could do carrier aggregation across within 4G and within 5G, but it's a vendor-specific solution. That I see as a challenge going forward. And the other pieces in terms of backend integration to OSS systems and all that, I think that we can solve.
Yeah.
But from a spec perspective, I'd like to see the areas of CA, X2 being opened up. And of course, the whole chipset ecosystem has to evolve. As I alluded to earlier, this is a cost play.
Yeah.
And volume is biggest part to general purpose chips. And when you're playing with Intel that provides Sapphire Rapids Nice Lake chips, which are not just for the telco sector, they play in manufacturing, they play in many different verticals. And they don't price it separately for different verticals. So unless you hit the price point on volume perspective, you're not going to hit the TCOs that can address the Indian market. And that I see is another challenge that needs to get addressed.
Sure. Thank you, Joy. This lays a good foundation. Michael, if I could come to you, we covered an operator's perspective. We covered the use cases and the emerging technologies. We also covered, a very important aspect about 5G being cloud native, programmable. But with 5G, there's a lot of data. You come with a unique vantage point that you actually have to face a lot of other challenges. First on the data side, second on the security side, both on hardware and software. What has been your experience from the discussions that you're having both in India and outside on what has been your version of the success of 5G, or for that matter, the rollout of the networks for the readiness of 5G in the Indian context?
So to answer your question, so if I were to touch upon this 5G aspect, one of the things from what we had been working with is more from a private 5G angle, right? We had been engaging with various system integrators, various telcos, and even the 5G use cases, as Shankaran was talking about, it predominantly goes back to the manufacturing, it goes back to the transportation industry, it goes back to the logistics.
Right.
Now, one of the classic use cases which I can correlate very well, when I was working with a service provider 3 decades back, we had rolled out EDI for the central excise to the ports, etc. And I remember the challenge was that when a ship comes, the data needs to go to customs, it has to go to the port crest. Now EDI was the first place where they were talking about a standard as to how this. But then the connectivity part at that time, that was a bigger challenge. I still remember people used to come to our office with a floppy to share the data because the connectivity was a challenge kind of. Now, rewinding from there or moving fast forwarding that, now we have a project what we have successfully rolled out in globally, where we had been partnering with a private 5G, specifically from a port, and what we had been trying to address is when a ship is kind of nearing a port or whatever, how quickly that data can be transferred to the various agencies so that they start processing that data. And if you look at the cost effectiveness, right, when a ship docks at a port, your clock starts, right? How efficiently you are able to unload and load and go. A lot of times, even from an Indian perspective, that paperwork is a big hindrance. The cranes do the job, logistics can be done, but in terms of what can be, processed from a paperwork, that becomes a hindrance, and that is a successful project what we have worked on. And similarly, there has been a lot of discussions which has happened purely from a OT manufacturing perspective as to how private 5G, system integrators are working with various automobile or certain other manufacturing industries as to how it will help them in that scenario. Because again, that sensors giving you, early data points, warnings, efficiency levels. Because as again, what we are talking about from a OT or a manufacturing, that kind of perspective, like what Shankar was referring about, any downtimes or any hindrance in the production, it's directly translated into dollars and it can multiply. Right? So what we had been working with all these providers is in terms of when this connectivity is going, we start looking at how to secure the connectivity part of it. Then, as you said, there is huge volume of data, how to protect the data. Now that can be a cloud, that can be a data center, hybrid environment, how to protect the edge, where the data is getting access, etc. Then also look at the visibility in terms of who is accessing data, or what are the bad actors who is trying to do whatever. And that is where a lot of this AI ML also can come into play. Right? We have huge volume of events coming from various points. Right? It could be a tab, it could be a sensor, it could be a server, it could be networking equipment.
Sure.
So this huge volumes of events coming, it's not practically possible for a human to go through it and analyze and see is there something going wrong, or to correlate to see is there somebody trying to actually circumvent the existing security measures or whatever controls what has been put in. Now that is where AI will be able to train and maybe give predictive warnings in advance so that you are better equipped to proactively look at what is happening in the network, give visibility, and then look at as to how you will be able to better equipped to handle this kind of a situation once it arises to the remediation factor.
So, but Michael, if I were to just focus on the network hardening part, or even encryption standards that are being rolled out from an India perspective, now the new data privacy laws, which are very specific to India, are there any specific learnings that you might have so far? I know the rules have yet to come out, but any discussions that you're doing very specific on the security and the privacy aspect?
Yeah, so we are working with various agencies, especially from a government digital initiative perspective, whether it is state governments, whether it is PSUs, whether it is at the central government level. Like whatever the security, whatever the digital transformation journey what they are getting into, we are working with that agencies to give them in terms of what we have seen globally when somebody was rolling out, what are the framework, and why these pieces are required. Because when you look at an automation scenario, I'm sure this colonial pipeline, we have seen even in India now, right? There have been outages to critical infrastructure, right? Somebody trying to compromise or has already compromised, etc. So once we automate this, it's also very, very important that we protect that.
Right.
Now, what are the measures to be put starting from endpoint to application protect, network protection to all these various angles to be looked at? What could be the framework to look at? Like we were talking about, even from security, in the olden days, different vendors never used to talk to each other. They never used to share threat intelligence, etc. From there, we are evolving where it's becoming open standards. There are standards being created. Again, API is the the thumb rule using which everybody integrates. Now, we are helping the agencies to look at a scenario where you can create an ecosystem where you are not dependent on a vendor, where the system can scale up. Because
Open data architecture.
the data volumes or the transactions, what we are talking about from an India perspective, once the 5Gs and the connectivity becomes better in a rural environment, etc., it's going to be very huge, maybe, which rest of the world may not have sized it or not anticipated.
Sure.
So whenever the systems are getting created, it's very, very important that the structure what they're creating is a highly scalable one. As per the business requirement, the bandwidth requirement, the user requirements, it can scale up. And 5G also, based on the kind of throughputs what you can get, the backend infrastructure also needs to scale up.
Sure. So, Michael, before I open it up to audience, Rajesh, if I can come to you and ask you one very important question. We covered, everyone to your left are your service providers, and you work in tandem with them to make things happen for the customers. From a vendor and partnership ecosystem, what kind of what kind of opportunities you're seeing, what kind of challenges that you're seeing, or any advice that you want to provide for the partner ecosystem to customize their solutions for you in the Indian context? Now, I know there are device manufacturers that are coming, software companies, there are solutions that are being brought in, but are you seeing any change in the way partnership and vendor ecosystem is evolving, and any recommendations that you might want? And then I'll try to open it up to the audience.
Sure. I think it's a very important question when the technology is, transforming. So if you see the other, before 5G, generally the services were limited to voice and data. Very limited to services we used to talk. But when today we're talking, if you see this, all panelists also talking about IoT, Industry 4.0, enterprise. So it's 5G is encompassing everything. So here the technology partner role has changed. They're not simply a box supplier, they're also part of the solution supplier.
Right.
So that's a big thing, change is happening, and I think we are associated with all our partners. And recently, if you see this phenomena has happened like air fiber, what you also earlier referred, the FWAs is also came as a big driver from the technology partners,
Right.
not by the only device guys or others. It's a technology partners driving. And Bizarre is here, and we also talking about, of course, the same time, Orion is talked, a lot of discussion happening on the Orion side. So that is where the TCO front, of course, TCO is one of the requirements. It's not the only TCO is the requirement.
Right.
This is where this technology exploration point of view, where the 5G is giving a lot of things, but it's now every application is a different service.
Right.
So where RIC and all is coming, XApp, RApp, so it's a partnership which is a lot of APIs getting opened. So it's the entire ecosystem has to work now. It's not simple box supply, just give the voice and data. It's just beyond that. And even this IMC also saying a lot of startups, both the startup we are saying, everybody is doing, people connected. We are on our booth, we have a lot of startup companies who is showing the AR, VR gaming. So it's both OEM as well as device partner. Of course, device side, more on the, I think in Indian markets, more of price size has to be a little worked on. OEM has to not only supply the boxes, they have to give the right solution, and they have to jointly work that consumer easily adopt it.
Right.
And it goes as a solution, not only simply as a box supplier. So that's what I say.
Fantastic. So we heard from Rajesh the fact that consumer demand and where 5G is most effectively expected to get the largest attraction. We heard from Shankar about how some of the use cases beyond B2C are going to become relevant, and the challenges that he has been seeing, opportunities that he's seeing in servicing the transformational levers that organizations have. We heard Kumar speak about the importance of 4G saturation, and also the fact that 5G as a demand itself is the capacity augmentation that is happening is creating a demand by itself. We heard Bijay speak about how Open RAN is going to transform not only greenfield but also brownfield operations and what challenges he faces. We heard Michael speak about some of the security challenges. He also spoke about open data architecture and how that can be leveraged. But before I ask them the next round of questions or a concluding set of questions, is there anything that the audience would like to ask them so that we can have a few questions? Yes.
Hello, yes. So, my question is on smart manufacturing. And I know the service industry is a very important element in making 5G in a real thing inside the smart manufacturing. And that's what I think Shankar Narayan, you actually referred to. So, in the hinterland of IT Delhi, let's say Gurgaon, and there are a lot of factories, and we have a program called Flexible Smart Manufacturing under some of our professors who are trying to bring all the flexibility into the manufacturing things. We see a lot of challenges, especially if there are legacy equipments which have to talk with current machines. So how do you think a service integrator, or maybe taking from your experience, should address this problem? Is it as investment into a platform that can enable projects, or into the projects as turnkey? So what is your opinion going forward as a roadmap for TCS? Thanks.
The moment I saw you in the audience, I knew I was going to get a bummer question. So thanks for that. You lived up to your reputation. So I think it is always a chicken and egg story. Okay, where do you invest first? I was earlier the CTO for TCS, facing into all the telecom service providers. And one of the biggest questions they always ask me is, Shanky, I've got the fancy new tool called 5G. Everybody likes my presentation, but nobody's buying. The enterprise side, nobody's buying. So one of the things is somebody has to step in to create this as platform capabilities. At the end of the day, I think Vijay made a very important statement about TCO. So when you look at individual use cases within a shop floor, the business case doesn't stack up at all. The business case just doesn't stack up. Because it will be good, but you will at best be improving productivity by 10%, which is not commensurate to the capital investment cost that they need to go through, or the rip and replace transformation cost that they need to go through. Second is, nobody has an appetite to spend 2.5 years transformation journey on a business platform which will completely transform, unless otherwise they have a way. I'm talking about the complete mid-tier of the manufacturing sector. I'm not talking about the top tier, because it's easy to give an example of the top tier who has the appetite to do big spends. The biggest chunk in India is the mid-tier, where the normal curve lies. Where we see an opportunity is platform players either being funded through a telecom service provider or a systems integrator, providing the integrating glue between what the manufacturing customers want to achieve with technology versus what the technology providers in-depth do provide. I think there is a huge opportunity play, and that is where I feel a lot of platform plays might start to come, emergent platform plays might start to happen in India, where you will provide platform as a service capability to enable smart manufacturing to jumpstart, with both sides of the ecosystem, the provider side of the ecosystem and the servicing side being integral part of that ecosystem. Because nobody has the money to build the platform within their enterprise. The concept is naive if you say that there's a platform within the shop floor. It doesn't work that way. There is a need to invest in standards, predominantly because all the technology pieces are evolving very fast in silos. Okay, you have an individual use case being shown in the AI. You have an individual standards being developed with devices and manufacturing. You have all the machines evolving robotic machines evolving in a completely different pace. So there is no integral glue which brings up. So one, if you say, will there be a standards body which will emerge? The answer is no. But there has to be some element of abstraction layer to be built in, and that lies the foundational glue for such transformation that you're talking about.
We can add to that.
We had-
Add one point to that. So You asked about smart manufacturing, but if we draw a parallel to the automobile sector, there's a 5G association. It's not a standards body, but at least they're looking at how do you implement use cases in the automobile sector in a way that is transparent to connectivity and services. Because the whole challenge with smart manufacturing is that first is the device ecosystem has to mature. So you can't just take a legacy 40-year-old system that's out there, even a last 10-year system, and convert it to 5G because a lot of them use proprietary protocols. So that device ecosystem has to get addressed first. Connectivity is just a small part of it, and the skill set to actually provide that end-to-end stack is missing in many cases because it's only the manufacturing guys who really know how these systems work and how they're integrated into the back-end IT systems, because this whole service transformation does not happen with just connectivity change. The entire stack has to work across, and that's where system integrators, beyond just service providers, and this is where we see the challenge even with, take one of the largest global operators, Verizon. Their big push has been on private networks, and they've set up their business group with the positioning that they will generate X number of revenues. And even in the last 2 quarters, when the earnings results came out, they kept pushing it out because they said this has been so challenging, even just to provide connectivity. Because even to provide connectivity between a small to medium enterprise, the variables are so huge that you cannot have a cookie cutter solution. And then when you look at any large enterprise transformation that has to happen, whether it's smart manufacturing or agriculture or across any vertical, you have to bring in a system integrator because those are the guys who know how the IT systems work with the OT systems, how the connectivity layers work. And system integrators are stepping up in 5G to be the likes of TCS or IBM, Infosys and others in the Indian market. They are the ones who could eventually bring this to fruition because the skill set is lacking and the people who have knowledge across these different horizontal layers to build this end-to-end vertical stack transformation is very few. And they're very sector specific. So you have to bridge this team together. You have Accenture and even the consulting firms, McKinsey and others, who are playing a role in this transformation. So I think this is something that will take a few years to play out. There'll be certain verticals that would have some initial blueprints implemented. The platform concept is good, but to realize the concept, it takes a lot of work. And you have to start with some blueprints, and those blueprints can eventually extend from one vertical to another.
Yeah, we have a question there.
Hi, I'm Vikram from COI. So it's not a technology question. I know it's a CTO roundtable, but it's addressed to Shankar and Kumar. Both you folks, I don't know if there's the equivalent of a CTO in BSNL. I haven't heard of one, but possibly there is, right? So here's my question. The question is, you will roll out a 4G network, segue to 5G. All your subscribers are 2G subscribers. There are 200 million of them, right? With each technology, this becomes more expensive. What's the discussion you all are having with the government or internally to move these 2G guys onto a 4G network, which you'll roll out pretty soon? You know, you mentioned the Bharat Saturation Project. It's okay, the fiber will reach there, but the consumption and service delivery is on this. Yes. And this has to be made available. So what's the discussion around that?
So I'm not discussing anything about moving 2G to 4G, but once we roll out 4G saturation in all this, I think there are, I think the government and the BSNL have done their homework. There are many 4G users there with 4G phones will be able to access the network. The problem is there are so few of them that it's not viable for any service provider, including yours, to set up networks there. So I think the impetus is needed to set up these things in spite of economic unviability. I think that's what they're doing so that the 4G users there will be able to access the 4G network if they have a smartphone rather than being stuck with 3G or 2G in spite of having smartphones. By the way, there are a lot of smartphones. There's a huge used phone market in the rural areas where it is a thriving market. And once this network is set up, that will actually create an impetus for people to go out and buy even a second-hand phone. So I think it's a chicken and egg problem. Okay, so you can say they're using 2G because that's all they have access to. But if they have access to 4G, they will quickly move to 4G with a cheap smartphone, and there are plenty of them available.
No, Kumar, there are people, 2G is in urban areas as well.
Yeah.
It's not in villages, rural areas, you know. Whoever can afford a smartphone has afforded one. But the fact is the 200 million guys cannot afford that. And the device is expensive.
Yeah, right.
So, having discussions with USO or DOT, there is a need for focus to get these guys onto 4G. And
Yes.
So far I see there's a gap. So maybe I was wondering if you guys are having a conversation.
No, I'm not having a conversation, but I think market forces will drive that. I think we are very good as a country to adopt to market forces. So if people see the value in 4G and they have access to 4G, then they will find ways and means to get a 4G phone. Okay. So look at it. Every person who's selling you anything is a QR code and you can pay him 5 rupees. How did that happen? Simply because that's an economic necessity for them to do business. So once they have access to 4G, phones will be there. We'll find a way. We are a jugaad country.
Yeah, Rajesh wants to add. Just one.
Vikram, I will little give you the add-on on this. Because yes, this is challenge for us as well, 4G since long and we're not converting. But you're absolutely right. Somebody has to intervene this part. And recently we're seeing some intervention from the government. As you're saying, maybe these people talking to government, but we've seen in Rajasthan's circle recently, the IGVSI scheme they call Indira Gandhi Sanchar Yojana. And they offer roughly 2.5 million women's free phone. Government has intervened. There's a DBT direct bank transfer of 8,000 rupees to buy a smartphone. And they are we bidded that, we win the solution RFP, and we supplied 2.5 million SIM card to these guys. So there's a joint venture plan with operator and government who serves 2.5 million women last month just to serve this 2G to 4G. So this kind of a scheme will work, I feel, slowly in many markets. Otherwise, yes, you're absolutely right. They're not going to buy 8,000 rupees phone. Of course, I got only 75 rupees per SIM per month.
I think, not a flippant answer, but I think 2024 with all the elections coming in, I am hoping there'll be a lot of 4G phones available for everybody.
Yeah, I think there's one more question and then we'll conclude.
Yeah, a question is to Bijoy. This is Ramesh from HCL Tech. How do you see Open RAN deployments going across the world? There's very few Open RAN specific deployments. Though there is 5G deployments which are very vendor driven, but Open RAN hasn't been hitting off, and number of players, because of the disaggregated architecture that was supposed to come, and the whole plug and play concept of getting the vendors change for each component, that's not witnessed either, right? So how do you see Open RAN and going forward? Is it having any movement, or is it going to become a 5.5G, or will it become a 6G only kind of thing for Open RAN architecture?
So just stepping back a minute, right? So when we started with Open RAN around 6 to 7 years ago, the whole concept was that you would have a plethora of companies pop up doing radios. And the initial intent was that you'll have a lot of Chinese companies build radios, and we would just build the software side from Avenue perspective. We would leverage the ecosystem of Chinese vendors building out these radios, and maybe Ericsson, Nokia, and others would start opening up their radios. What did not happen, what we did not envision at that time from 2017 on, was that the US kind of locked out the Chinese players for the majority of the world, because once that motion came about, we had to go build specific radios. So the biggest challenge outside of all the other areas of interoperability, all of those can be addressed. But if you don't have Open RAN compliant radios, and there's no Open RAN, you don't put a software in, because there are variants of this which Ericsson and others talk about, Cloud RAN or vRAN, which is just virtualizing the software side of it, the baseband side of it. But you're still not opening up the radio to a baseband. So we see that as the number one challenge in terms of getting Open RAN to scale. The good thing is now we have players like Fujitsu, NEC, KMW, Avenue ourselves, we have our own radios, and we have interoperated with around 17 different radio players. We see that we need to see that ecosystem succeed. And there's a big push from vendors, from operators, and the governments as well to kind of open up that interface. And recently, 3 weeks ago, we had Ericsson just came out saying the new versions of the Open RAN specs, at least a massive MIMO, they're going to make it Open RAN compliant. We have to wait and see, because that's 2025 before you're going to see that spec closed. on the massive MIMO side. So once that happens, and you'll see more of those radios come about. The other big part has been this evolution to the RIC, the radio intelligent control, and you'll see a lot of players come in doing XNR apps. The challenge there has been, if you look at Ericsson's positioning, they say, we're not going to open up the E2 interface to a near real-time RIC. We'll do the non-real-time RIC, which is more like an evolution of the SON as it exists in the network today. Our view is that eventually this would get opened up. You'll see more players. If you, as an example, take Cohere. It's a standalone company who's just investing in spectral efficiency, and take operators who are spending, be it on 2G or 4G or 5G, the cost per bit per megahertz that you have to spend. And if any app that comes in, which gives you 2x multiplier in your spectral efficiency, and if it comes from a third party, which is innovation, and this whole 100 testbed, 100 use cases that was just launched 2 days ago in India, if we have one of those players come up with an app which can interface into an Open RAN system, improve the spectral efficiency by 2x, or improve the coverage where you don't have to build these number of cell sites, obviously a vendor like Ericsson and Nokia just building their own in-house solution is not going to be able to compete with that ecosystem. It will take time for the ecosystem to mature. But we see that as the path forward, where you're able to mix and match radios, which doesn't happen today, and innovation driven through XNR apps as a true path which will accelerate Open RAN into the broader ecosystem. Now, specifically, where is the market today? In terms of how many trials that are happening, all that, there's this ORPC-based map which is being posted on LinkedIn and many other places. If you go to Mavnia blogs, you could see that as well, in terms of number of operators who are actually experimenting with Open RAN and trialing out. But in terms of true scale, Dish, many people would discount Dish saying it's a greenfield network, but Dish today has around 15,000 sites live, 10,000 of it is in Mavnia, and they're the first ones to actually do an iPhone certification, iPhone 15 certification with Warner. And when Apple does a certification of Warner or any network KPIs, they don't differentiate between an Open RAN network and non-Open RAN network. It's the same set of KPIs for the UE. And we were the first ones to pass that in Dish. So from a standalone network maturity, we are there. Where we don't have the proof points yet is in brownfield networks in large scale. And this is where the likes of Deutsche Telekom, there's a couple of tier ones in the US who's not public yet. Deutsche Telekom is public, Vodafone UK, who's deploying it in urban markets in UK. You'll have Orange with the Pick Your project. In other Asian markets as well, there are a few players with whom we're playing. And of course, in the Indian market, it's not public. A lot of people don't talk about it. But from a timing perspective, as I alluded to earlier, we'll see small number of sites go live, which are in brownfield this year. You'll see larger scale deployments happen in 2024. And you'll see a much bigger rollout happen in 2025, because it's not just about going and deploying Open RAN for the sake of deploying Open RAN. There needs to be an investment cycle that goes along with it. If you look at operators, take Airtel, who's already launched a bunch of sites. They've launched close to 90,000 sites today. And if Open RAN was ready and they were comfortable, they would have launched with Open RAN from day one. There's a maturity cycle which KPIs need to be met, and we are in that process right now. We're pretty comfortable where we are. But that maturity, that investment cycle in India happened late. In other areas of the world, that investment cycle can come either in terms of an existing vendor having to be ripped and replaced because they're a Chinese player, or the operators acquiring new spectrum. And if you don't have an entry point in which you could bring in a new player, because there's a cost involved in integrating and bringing in a new player, this won't happen. So you have to look at the solution maturity, the ecosystem maturity, as well as the investment cycles at which the operator can bring in a new player, which can be either 5G transition or a spectrum addition in 5G transition, or in future with 5.5G. At least globally, what we're seeing is the tier one operators who started with 5G, they're looking at either FWA kind of use cases to bring in private networks, rural areas first, or new spectrum acquisitions that they do to bring in a new player.
Can I do just one follow-up?
We are running out of time, but
Just one, yeah. Sorry, Vijay. This E2 and O1 that you talked about, the interfaces to get apps above, right? X apps and R apps. But do you see, the large number of them defined, right? Because see, the data and the way in which the control of the RAN can be done has to be synonymous or uniform across all the vendors. So even if that happens, E2 and O1 APIs are fully defined, the specific RAN vendors optimizations below, they don't give the same homogeneous data for the apps to work, right? So if I do an X app with a model, does it work for an Ericsson network vis-a-vis a Nokia network? Should I do separate modeling for each one of the vendors, or do you see homogeneous model working across vendors? So there are those kind of challenges as well, right?
So from an E2 perspective, it's still in the early stages. Right now, there's just a few of those metrics that are defined. And you have to look at this from either an API concept or an SDK concept. So the idea is that you could have data which is normalized and sent to the app provider, which is the approach that Mavneer has taken. We have a network intelligence service platform which normalizes the data. That way, any third-party XApp or RApp provider that comes in doesn't have to know the nuances of what that data means. The alternate approach is you just implement the spec as is and you rely on the XApp or RApp vendor, which is the approach that some of the other vendors are taking. Our push in the standards has been normalize the data with the platform layer in the RIC, which then allows more applicability to the long tail of developers of XNR apps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think, we have completely run out of time, but if I were to just take one word answer of what do our panelists see as the road for transformation for 5G or communication technologies for India in the next 1 year, one word that defines it. If I could start with you, Michael, just one word, and other than what Vikram has recommended, and other than the platform.
Yes, so for me, the 5G is going to be a major catalyst for the WAN transformation.
One word. Sorry. WAN transformation. Kumar.
Ubiquitous connectivity by network sharing.
Excellent. Bijoy.
It's more than one word, by the way.
Yeah.
I'll just say open. Keep the network open.
Open. Shankar.
It is integrated.
Excellent. Rajesh.
Monetization.
Monetization. Thank you. With that, I'll thank my fellow panelists. And you know what, my experience across the 6 IMCs that I have been part of, the best answers that we get is when things are not scripted. So thanks to the audience to ask those questions and get the best out of our panelists. Thank you.